This video is going to contain quite a bit of very heavy shit, some dark and morbid macabre shit, and some heavy topics. If that's not something that you're equipped for, or if it's something that you are potentially sensitive to, I highly suggest not checking out this video and going and watching something else, or otherwise just not delving into this genre to begin with. Welcome to another Rough Guide. I'm your host Alex, and today we're taking a step into some of the darkest music you're gonna hear on the entire metal spectrum by talking about the family-friendly genre that just sparks sunflowers and sunshine by the mere mentioning of the name DSBM, also known as depressing, suicidal black metal. I don't know what gives me this hunch, but something tells me that just hearing that name alone can give you a decent indication of what we're talking about here. DSBM has some stylistic origins in the 1990s with dark ambient bands. Dark ambient, which will eventually get its own video in this series, being a genre of black metal that mixes in synth elements, folk elements into an ambient sound to make it more forlorn, depressive, and as a whole, DSBM also has a lot of roots in the atmospheric black metal subgenre. A lot of the biggest bands and solo projects that you see coming out of the DSBM landscape will always sort of have this linkage to dark ambient in some form or fashion or atmospheric black metal, and the late 90s and early 2000s is when a lot of these projects flourished. Americans really like being fucking sad. Take a shot every time most of the origin for a specific genre that is just depressing as all hell comes from America. DSBM is notoriously a solo project endeavor, and even though black metal as a whole kind of is enamored with the solo project mentality, DSBM, much like dark ambient music, really lends itself to solo projects, with two of the biggest names and two names that you might have actually heard in black metal, Xasthur and Leviathan, being solo projects, both hailing from the United States as well. There are other bands like Shining, Nocturnal Depression, as well as the band Forgotten Tomb that sort of fall under this umbrella. And it's sort of like a spectrum, because if you look at a project like Forgotten Tomb, a lot of their DSBM tendencies comes through in the lyrics, because at their core they're a black metal band that is very influenced by doom metal and gothic music, but it's their lyrical nihilism that sort of bleeds through and contributes to this label fitting them like a glove. DSBM kind of comes in two different forms. Just gonna keep it blunt here. You either have DSBM on one side that is angry, enraged, and hating the absolute world, extremely nihilistic, bleak, hateful, and on the other side of the coin, you kind of have the I'm going to self-harm and kill myself sort of DSBM. I warned y'all, it's gonna get heavy. That is why when you see this genre mentioned in a lot of places, people will be like, be careful if you tread into this. The imagery, the lyrical themes, and just overall what the music is about can very much influence people who are already vulnerable, and I don't even want to get into that. I'm going to be putting a link to the suicide hotline in a pinned comment down below, and if you ever worry about someone potentially being in that state or showing concerning signs, or you yourself are struggling, please don't hesitate to reach out, because I am sure that the people around you would much rather have you still be here to be mad at them than not have you be here at all. Some signatures of DSBM would be obviously the atmosphere. It is usually extremely repetitive and atmospheric. Take how atmospheric black metal can be very beautiful and gorgeous and have the sheen and just nice texture that makes everything like a shining ray of light. DSBM basically will play things in much more of a minor key approach more often than not, or at least will let things ring out to really sell that sort of desolate feel. Most of these compositions are as asphyxiating as they are minimalistic. The low fidelity recordings as well as the approach to sound design is very consistent with dark ambient and other raw black metal bands. Considering a lot of these bands are within the underground and are solo projects, they don't have access and don't really want access to high-grade recording equipment. So a lot of the bands, if you step into the underground outside of the more popular ones, are going to be very raw. Another hallmark of this style is black metal is known for having shrieks, sometimes growls, but DSBM, while they certainly do boast these shrieks and growls at times, they much more often will have what I like to call the banshee wail. To sort of sell the point home of anguish and torment and agony, pure pain, they will usually ring out these shrieks that sound like they are, in the kindest way I can say, being fucking gutted alive and burned at the stake. There will be no tonality, there will be no rhyme or reason, it will literally just be pure screams of terror. Not really much in the way of technique or finer detail or trying to smooth out the edges. It is intended to be rough, to be rigid, to be sharp, to be brittle, to offend, and to sell home the point that they are portraying. I did a whole video essay, which is actually one of my most popular videos on the channel, about the project Silencer, which has a ton of rich history or hoaxes depending on how you see it. But if you listen to any of the songs from the Silencer project, you'll hear these wails. DSBM has changed a lot throughout time. Xasthur is a big example of how DSBM kind of shifted over time, because when you look at his first records, they are extremely dark ambient inspired and low fidelity. They feel a lot like the Norwegians did dark ambient and just Scandinavia did dark ambient. But throughout the 2010s into the 2020s, you started to see a lot of NSBM bands take more of an approach from this raw black metal style and take hints of these banshee wails and these recording styles that lended themselves more to raw black metal than they did dark ambient, and you would hear less and less of the icy synths that would lace their way into early DSBM. It feels weird to use a term like this while describing DSBM, but a project like Thy Light is very shoegazy and dreamy and almost pretty in its aesthetic, whereas a project like Life Lover is much more crushing, despondent, heavy. So much like the lyrical themes can kind of vary between the pure hatred and nihilism to the more self-destructive ideology, you will kind of also see that mixture of sounds where you'll have one side of the coin be very brutal, be very despondent, heavy, and focus more on the crushing riffs and the despondency of the riffs and the discordance of the riffs, whereas other bands will kind of be more symbolic and more pretty and more beautiful and kind of resonate that in with their music. But I will say even the more self-destructive records on the spectrum will be very misanthropic in their tone. There is a very key theme of not liking humanity. It's just a matter of what that is filtered through, and it's either filtered through hating yourself in the process or just solely hating the rest of the world. And sort of these commentaries on the world as a whole fuels this genre to be what it is. That is one big difference between it and NSBM, which I did a rough guide on as well if you want to go check that out, is whereas NSBM is what it is solely because of its lyrical themes, of its imagery, DSBM is very stylistic as well, and it has different roots and it has different influences that make its music what it is. Going back into the heavy topic thing, it will usually depict something very self-destructive. These can range from literal pictures of the lead vocalist or someone a part of the project with self-harm marks. It will have hangings, it will have blood or gore. It is some very graphic stuff, and DSBM covers definitely have some of the most graphic material, and that's saying something. Because yeah, in death metal you can get some very gruesome and brutal drawings of skeletons with guts pouring out, and gore grind really pushes the envelope, but there is something kind of real and haunting and even more eerie about seeing these things from an actual human perspective, and that's one reason I think that DSBM album covers are some of the darkest, because even if they aren't some of the most graphically intensive or the most graphically extreme, the primitive nature of the minimalism kind of pulls me towards it as something that is just a sight to behold and something that will stick with you and just be, generally speaking, disturbing. But if you're wanting something positive, this is not a genre you're gonna want to step into. This is one of those things that embody a feeling, that embody darkness, and make no qualms about lingering in that hatefulness, in that rage, in that pure intensity. Just always make sure to take care of yourself, and I would not suggest listening to this music if it's something you could be sensitive to, but if you're wanting something that is going to be pretty much once in a lifetime in terms of a genre that you can't really get from anything else, definitely give it a shot. It's one of those genres that is a rabbit hole, and the farther you go down, the more creepy it's gonna get. That's enough from me. What are your opinions on DSBM? Let me know down in the comment section below. Do you have favorite projects, or do you just not fuck with the genre that much? Definitely let me know. I can't wait to hear it. Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to join the review family today, and smash that notification bell to be notified of my future uploads. You know who it is. My name is Jay Morris, and I'm signing off saying farewell.